Good morning to the Zoomcast of Harvest called Jesus Hands and Feet. And today we have Edi Demo with us, and he's a missionary. Well, maybe that's not the right word to use, but the word is he's a follower of Jesus living in Albania with his family. And in this program, what we try to do is not lift up people as heroes, but to use the experiences they have of demonstrating God's love, of being the hands and feet of Jesus in their cultural context, to help us to have other ideas about how can we do that? What are some other ideas so that we can think, oh, I might be able to do that. And so, Edi, we're delighted to welcome you to the program with my co-host Julian Gibb, and we're looking forward to hearing from you this morning. Julian, over to you.
Oh, well, great. Thanks, Bob. And Edi, it's always a pleasure to hear from you and see you this time, particularly as you saved my wife's life sometime in the past. There's a whole other story there for another Zoomcast, but it's just a pleasure to be with you. But tell us, Edi, a little bit about yourself and your background, because you're in Albania, and tell us a little bit about your journey to how Jesus called you.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Julian, for letting me be here. Really appreciating that a lot. As you said, I am from Albania. I was born in Albania and raised in Albania, and currently I live in Albania. Just for maybe the people who are on air, Albania is between Greece and Italy. Just for you to know where it is southeast of Europe. And I came to know the Lord in 1993. It is interesting because we belong to the first generation of Christians here in Albania. We've been under a huge period of darkness under Islam, actually, for more than 500 years, since in the 14th century. And not only that, but right after the Second World War, communism was established in Albania, and Albania became an atheistic state. Actually, in 1967 was declared to be the first world officially atheistic state. So I was born in 1978 in the midst of all this situation. I never heard anything about God until 1991 when communism fell in Albania because of the collapse of the economy. And Albanians were finally free after more than almost 600 years of total darkness to hear about the gospel. So 1991, the first missionaries came in Albania. At the time, I was exposed toward the Jesus film, a documentary made out of the Gospel of Luke. So I saw that movie, and that raised the interest for knowing God. When I went home that night, I remember that talking with my parents about this, and I heard from my parents that I come from a Muslim background. I never heard that before because during the communism, that was totally forbidden. And as you can imagine, even Muslims started to come to Albania when communism failed. And I thought to myself, I want to know God, but because I come from a Muslim background, I better follow God via Islam. So I started to attend a mosque for about 2 years and practicing Islam. But what I saw on that movie, the death and the resurrection of Christ, stayed in my heart and in my brain deep down. 1993 was the year that I started to have questions about death and the resurrection of Christ. So after 2 years practicing Islam, and it was an interesting journey that God brought different people on my way that year. And I had also a New Testament that I read, and it took me some months before I came to know the Lord. God opened my eyes, and in 1993, by the end of that year, I came to faith. So that's my little journey.
So why why Jesus? Why not be with the communism? Why not be with
this world has had many people trying to become God. but there is only one God who became man.
Mm.
And Jesus died and rose again. The resurrection of Christ is the thing that that grabbed my heart.
Mm.
People, I mean, people in this world has tried to do different things and good things, and many religious leaders in this world have come and said different kind of things and contributed somehow. But when it comes to the dead, all of them are dead, and their bones are still in this planet, on this earth. But only one came and
Mm.
defeated the death. So
No bones.
resurrection of Christ is why.
Yeah, no bones.
No bones.
so, 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 Eddie, so Christ has burst into your life, and how has that changed you?
I was 14 years old when I believed in Jesus. And I often say to the people that we minister here in Albania, not only, that I don't know how my life would be without God. When I see people living their own journeys of life
Mm.
without a foundation, without something that really is firm, and I don't know how my life would be. So how the Lord has changed my life, I think has totally changed the way that I um, spend my days, the way that I spend my life. I don't want just to live a life. I want to make an impact and be the aroma of Christ in this world. We
And
are
how
all pilgrims.
and how do you do that, Eddie? I mean, how so? Like in Albania and in other places where you operate, or rather Christ operates through you. How are you the hands and feet of Jesus? How do you make a difference?
Julian, I mean, all of us, we've got only one life to live. And we either invest this life or we either waste it. So what I mean with that is that every day we have the great privilege of spending time with God and getting to know Him through His Word, and getting to know and asking Him, Lord, how do you want me to live my life, and how do you want me to be a light to those people around me? And especially in this world, in this moment that we are living, there are so many people that are in need for hearing and seeing the love of Christ, and we are the hands and the feet of Jesus. So how we do that day by day with your neighbors, with when you go to shopping, when you meet with people. I mean, so everything around us needs to be with a purpose.
Okay, you've talked about that. You talk about that in generalities. What are some specific ways? What are some specific examples of with your neighbors or how you do shopping?
Mhm. Especially during this COVID period of time, we have seen, especially in Albania, that people had very big problems regarding eating. So had become for some months, has become very difficult for people to find food. So as a church, actually, we decided to create small packages, food packages, and go and distribute to those people in need, and talking with them about Jesus and telling to them why we are doing this. So practically during this period of time, that has been one of the things, also including giving a Bible inside those food packages. So
Hmm.
when you see a need and jump to that and ask the Lord will give you the wisdom to do
I
that.
love the
So this
word.
is just an example.
I love the word jump to that. You don't think, oh, I've got too much to do. I can't do that. But you use the word jump to it. And I love that because I think so many times we calculate, well, do I have time? You know, maybe I don't have enough resources, or if I do this, I won't have time to do that. But your idea of jumping, when you see an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, you don't contemplate, you don't think logically, is this the right thing to do? You jump to it. That's a beautiful word picture.
Correct.
I love
And
that.
actually, we didn't have the resources either. And by the grace of God, we've been able to distribute about 10,000 food packages. We're starting with nothing. So just spreading the word around, asking people that would like to contribute. So that's how it's been doing like that.
Wow. So that
10,000 since when? When did you begin?
This was April, from April.
10,000.
Correct.
And how many people are there in your church?
Well, we don't have enough people in the sense like there are not hundreds of people. We've got only 92 people currently. And but if you are willing, you can invite other people to help and to be part of that. So when we bring something to somebody and he is seeing that, you invite that person to be part of the same thing that you did to them. So it's like a chain.
Even if they're not Christians?
Well, Jesus took people with him that were not believers, and you know, so
He sure
they need
did.
to see.
Yeah.
They need to see what does it really mean to be a believer. Sometimes in our world today, people have heard too many things, but they are skeptic about seeing those things being in real life living. So
And sometimes I love to ask pastors that I'm training, and they're involved in discipleship. And I say, which comes first, evangelism or discipleship? And they say, evangelism, of course. And I say, let me ask you a question. How many of Jesus' disciples were born again when he invited them to follow him? Answer, maybe none.
actually, that is very interesting because it reminds me here in Albania, because we are the first generation of Christians, most of the people that are in our churches are not believers yet. So they come to hear the word of God, they come to be with believers, and then finally, and hopefully God will open their eyes so that they will come to know him.
So go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead.
So there's people, you've asked them who aren't Christians, but you've asked them if they want to be involved in helping other people. You know, they know that you're a Christian. Does that open the door to conversation?
You know, every opportunity, it's a great opportunity. If we see Jesus in the meeting with a woman in the well, with Samaritan woman, so he used just a normal conversation to bring the gospel. And that's what I'm saying. So as we are doing those things here in Albania, we are using those as an opportunity to preach and to tell them about Jesus. So these are huge opportunities to talk to them, especially when they are in need and when they see that need.
And because for me, Albania was, I used to watch like American films in the 80s and 90s. There's always the American plane and the USSR plane and the battling out, and of course the American always wins. But it's a former USSR bloc. So I mean, are people there in Russia, aren't they sort of hesitant of one, for any sort of faith? And then two, a sort of a faith that's associated incorrectly, of course, there's the Middle East, but associated with the West. Isn't this an American thing? And on Americans, on the West, something to be cautious of?
I would say that historically, we didn't like as Albanian historically to be under someone else, even though historically we have been occupied and so on. And during the Cold War, somehow we were under Russia, but actually we disconnected from Russia on the 60s as a country. And we were, because our dictator didn't like Khrushchev, the way that they were doing things, the Communist Party. So we became like an island of communism on its own during that period of time. So we were very isolated. So when the communism left Albania, Albanians loved the connection of the West. So they had a great desire, and Americans were and are, and hopefully will be very welcome. If you come here in Albania, you see the American flag waved in gas stations or all over. So people love, and actually Americans don't need a visa to come here. I don't know any other Muslim majority country where Americans are so welcome.
But so would you say that the harvest is plentiful then? That people there are actually, having been from an atheist background where there's nothing, suddenly that their curiosities and their inward yearnings for spirituality, that the harvest is plentiful?
Yes, I would say the harvest is huge. What I can say about this part is this: we've been under huge period of darkness, as I mentioned before, about 600 years of total darkness, and it seems to me like Albania was like, if I can make the analogy of a field planted with so many bad things in it, and what you need fire to burn everything to the ground and make the land ready for the new harvest. So this is historically what God did. We've been under Islam for a huge period of time. And if communism was not going to be so strong in Albania, Albania was not going to be so open as it is now because of the Islam. So God used a bad thing like communism to destroy the roots of Islam
Mm.
and to create an atmosphere and to create a land that will be open for the new harvest. And that's why I'm very thankful that God chose our generation to be part of all this wonderful work. So there is huge opportunity here in Albania for the gospel.
Eddie, what are some of the things that Christians are doing in Albania to be the hands and feet of Jesus? You gave the example of food distribution. What are some of the other examples?
Well, for example, what we have been doing is that helping children, especially teaching them during the summer, teaching them guitar, piano, drama, art, crafting. So in this way,
Mm.
educating them, but also bringing the gospel in that way. And not only that, but also because we are a culture under construction, if I can call it like that,
Okay,
because of
wow.
our history. Marriage, for example, has been many times in crisis here. What I can say about this is, for example, I know that in US, kind of the divorce and all those things are kind of normal for some decades now. But for us here in Albania, during the communism, was almost zero, the divorce rate, because
Mm.
government will not allow you during the communism time to be divorced. So right after the communism fell, the divorce rate went from zero very high immediately. So that was like a cultural shock. And people now entering in marriage, they are having difficulties, for example, like how to have better marriage, and they don't have any experience of that. So helping, what I want to say with that, we have created this kind of small groups where we teach people in the churches about marriage, how to have a good marriage, how to have parenting, because they also don't know how to invest in the children's life with a good purpose. So marriage and parenting courses has been also another very great way to help people. So there are huge opportunities. What I can say is that if somebody wants to do something, God has given already to them the talent, so they can use that kind of talent to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. I
Mm.
cannot be somebody that I'm not, but the gifts that God has given to me, I just want to put them into practice.
Praise the
So,
Lord.
Eddie, there's one of you, and how do you train others to disciple, to be in relationship with, to be the hands and the feet of Jesus? How do you train your people?
We are part of a church movement organization that we have called it Illyricum movement, which comes from Romans 15:19, with the name Illyricum. It is the ancient name for Albania. So the Apostle Paul has been here
Mm.
long time ago. And when we created the organization Illyricum movement here in Albania, we created it with a desire to plant and establish Albanian healthy local churches, because as I said, we are the first generation of Christians. So these are the first, like just like the book of Acts, the churches are very, very fresh and from the first moments. And as we are doing these church plantings, we are teaching, especially the future potential leaders that we are gathering from the group of the believers, and training them in specific ways, not only in the Bible, but also in practical ministry, teaching them since in the beginning the DNA, trying to give them the DNA of impacting the people's life and being active on reaching and live a life that will impact other people.
So what I'm hearing you say, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that planting churches is not just to plant a group of people who verbally witness, but it's planning a group of people who, by their lifestyle, earn the right to be heard. And then in the context of that demonstration of God's love, share the gospel. Is that correct?
That is correct. And as we see, for example, in the letter of Ephesians, when Paul is urging the church to do everything as for the Lord. So this is one of the wonderful things that we as the believers have in our lives as an opportunity. So if we are working, if we are serving, if we are doing anything, even in the community, we need to do it as for the Lord. So that's
Amen.
how we are encouraging people in our churches.
Eddie, thank you so much for being with us. Uh, we really appreciate your sharing what God is doing in Albania and what he's been doing through you, what he's been doing through his people who are first generation believers, and equipping them to not only be the mouth to proclaim the gospel, but to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so, for those who are watching, our challenge to you is to ask yourself today the question, what can God direct me to do? Father, show me, open my eyes, open my mind to be able to see the things that I can intentionally do to be Jesus' hands and feet.